Oh, another video diary, which I'm doing for nobody's amusement bar my own at the moment. I need to practice talking not so rapidly as well. And also, if I could practice talking in coherent sentences and not use phrases like not so rapidly as well, that would be helpful, I'm guessing. Uh, it was an interesting one yesterday in that I did an interview in the evening with Dr. Andrew Holden, an old friend of mine from the skeptic circles, talking about the process and the experience of applying to go to Cambridge or Oxford, one of the elite universities, as they're often regarded. And my experiences of doing that, because I applied to go to Cambridge and I got an interview, which I wasn't expecting. And I went there and it didn't go great. The fact that I never went to Cambridge beyond that first interview probably is indicative of that. It was an odd. It's really, really weird in that it would be easy to fall back on the whole thing of, well, I'm from staunch working class background and Cambridge is riddled with posh people, and therefore they didn't want me there. I didn't want to go there, but that's an oversimplification and such a sort of almost a knee-jerk reaction to sort of like you can't find me, I quit, didn't want to go with you anyway. All about they were prejudiced against me and vice versa. But you have to watch this video for the full story because it's interesting. I'll put a link up to anyone who cares. But I think a big part of it wasn't like I can't really blame anyone at Cambridge. They didn't do anything wrong insofar as they were doing what they always do. Like I got an interview. They didn't have to give me one if they were so scared of the proletariat entering their hallowed halls of academia. And I was so far out of my comfort zone. I was at the time I was like 17. I'd never lived outside small Welsh Magnan Valley. My horizons were very limited. I've often said that before. You grow up in a valley, your horizons are like 5 miles apart. So you don't really. It doesn't take much to expand them. A 10-mile drive down the road will do it. So traveling further and further afield is quite intimidating. And it was just really strange. Like, I remember sort of going there thinking this place is like 700 years old and all the archways are too short because they were built at a time when people didn't grow so tall because of nutrition, etc. And just people just died a lot then because it was a long, long time ago. And but it was very, all the stereotypes I'd heard, thinking they were just ridiculous caricatures, were just completely real. Sat in this waiting room with some other kids from clearly more well-to-do schools, and they were discussing their latest debate club meet. What were they discussing? Like was Proust or Chaucer a more influential writer, or things like that? And one of them turned to me in an effort to include me in the conversation, which was very nice of him, and said, "What was your school's most recent debate about?" And I think I just mumbled something because the only thing I could think of was the fact that John said Gary snogged his girlfriend behind the bike shed, so he kicked him in the nuts. And I mean, does that count as a debate? It was definitely a difference of opinion as to who should or should not be snog/kicked in the nuts. And yeah, but it wasn't quite the level of academic and intellectual rigor I think they were going for. But it does sort of make me realize, once you go too far outside your comfort zone, it's really stressful. If I'd gone to Cambridge, I probably would have made the best of it. Probably would have settled in eventually. But just the idea of going was just like, no, I don't belong here. This isn't how things work. And sort of thought about that again because yesterday was Thursday when wife needs to work. So I was doing some of the homeschooling. And my kids were 8 and 5. And it's really difficult. Not that they're the problem. My 5-year-old is very reluctant. But a lot of people said it's really stressful. Objectively, you should look at it and think, well, it's just, your kids give them some work on the computer and they log into a few things, and why is that such hard work? Why is that such a big deal? But it is. And I think it's because we sort of learn context and situations quite early on. And for kids, school is like a sort of really important environment, a big context of a situation where they know the rules. That's why when you're a kid, when you see a teacher outside of school, it can almost blow your mind. We see a teacher in the supermarket, or like I grew up in a pub, a restaurant, and sometimes teachers would come and have food in where I lived, and that just freaked me out because that's not what they're supposed to do. Teachers hear, parents hear never the twain shall meet apart from parents' evening, which is a whole other thing. But even then, it's sort of like a respectful interaction. It's like, it's almost like a diplomatic exchange between two frosty nations, and that is how we sort of see it. And the homeschooling thing has really thrown a spanner into that, the works of that understanding. That because when you're a kid, schoolwork happens here, maybe homework happens at home, teachers do this, parents do this, and then when your parents have to homeschool you, it's just so jarring. Your brain is not really, it hasn't developed for that yet. It takes a while. And same with the parents. Then you're normally the one who says, like, what do you learn in school today? And teachers are taught, educated and trained in how to teach. Most of us aren't. When it comes to kids anyway, it's a very challenging and difficult job. And, so teachers are really doing their best. But it's sort of nice to sort of see what work they do. But it's also the context. Like, kids know that, well, I go to a classroom, I sit with my friends, I do work there. And that's a good way we interact. We form relationships, we have a certain time frame, and then we go outside, and then we have lunch. And so it's ordered, it's structured. And homeschooling just changes all that in a way which is distressing when you're so used to something. Kids fall into a pattern really quickly. Like, they're very adaptable, they're really flexible, but also they're really sort of quick to learn. And hence, like, well, if I go to school, that's how school works. They've absorbed that for like a big chunk of their lives now. Like, and just to change that from both the parent and child perspective really sort of undermines some of the fundamentals of how we think the world works. Like, it's hard to be a parent and say, you must do this work. Here is your assessment. I'm going to give you this assignment. I'm going to watch you do it. Also, what are you on for lunch? Should we go to the park later? And teachers don't do that, and parents generally don't do that. It's a real weird meld of two seemingly, or what we thought would be incompatible personas. And the kids are the same thing, the parents are the same thing, so it's very stressful all around. And that's probably why it's such an uphill struggle. Why parents tend to be indulging in more drinking, which is fine. It's dry January for me, but I'm not judging anyone else. And so it's you can sort of see how straying outside your comfort zone. It's good to develop, it's good to grow, but do it too much at once, and with no recourse to go back to where you were. It's a bigger deal than that. Like, they've even done studies like when, like, obviously, like, fear of the unknown is a thing. Also, so is curiosity, sort of interest in the unknown. If you do animal studies, they tend to, like, if you put them in the middle of a completely strange place, they'll freak out and get scared. But if you put their sort of home, their habitat, next to an unfamiliar place, they will go out and find it, and come back again. So, exploring the unknown is good if you've got a comfort zone to go back to. And right now, a lot of us don't, because it's a pandemic and we don't know when that's going to end. And that can be stressful. Some of us, drink more, some of us turn to projects, some of us just start talking out loud into a camera. And I have no idea if anyone's even listening, but we do what we can.